Hey Panning family, Happy New Year. It is January 1st of 2018 and today's video is going to be my finale for the Urban Decay Naked palette. I have been panning this palette for a little bit over a year. I started on December 1st, 2016. My goal was to hit pan on each of the shades, not necessarily use anything up. Because of my job, I am not allowed to wear makeup every day. Anyway, let's just get into it. I also wanted to include some thoughts about what I learned this year. I have a handy dandy note sheet about the topics that I wanted to discuss in today's video. So let's just go ahead and jump in. I am going to show a clip of where I was on December 9th of this month, or last month now, just so you can see where I was. This is where I am today at the end of the year. I don't think that there are very many changes from 3 weeks ago. First of all, I wanted to address the irritation issue that I had mentioned the past couple of videos. I had been experiencing some eyelid swelling and I had attributed that to some of the shades in this palette that I was using on my eyelid. Sin, Sidecar, Half Baked, and Toasted to be more specific. So I had gotten a new eyelash curler because in the past I had noticed that my eyelash curler was causing some irritation, so I got a brand new one. And about a week after I had filmed my last update, I had noticed some irritation on the corner of my eye. And that day I had used Naked, Buck, and Creep in the outer corner. And so I decided, you know what, it's probably these eyeshadows and I'm just not going to use those eyeshadows anymore. So the only shadows that I have been using since the 22nd of December were Virgin and as a highlight shade and a brow bone highlight, and then Buck as a contouring and bronzing shade. I had not been using any of the other eyeshadows for about a week. I've continued to use my eyelash curler along with some of the other eyeshadows that I have been using, and a couple of days ago I discovered the same pattern of irritation on the opposite eye. And I thought that's really bizarre, especially because, you know, there was a very specific pattern to the irritation. So I took my eyelash curler and I pretended to curl my lashes, and lo and behold, there was irritation in the exact spot where the eyelash curler touched my skin. And also, when I touch my eyelid with the eyelash curler, that is where my eyelid swells up. So it was not the shadows, and so that makes me a little bit sad that I'm discovering this a little late because I could have been using those eyeshadows the entire time. It wasn't the eyeshadows causing the irritation, it is eyelash curler. So I have not been using this for the past couple of days, and so my eyelashes are not curled. I have no mascara on them, so hopefully, you know, I don't look tired or on camera or something. But anyway, it's too bad because I could have been using the shades more, and so there would have been more progress. I guess this is why I'm mentioning the whole saga with the eyelash curler. So let me just turn you around and show you the dips in the shadows so you can see where I am at the end of the year. From here on out, my Naked palette is going to be retired from my collection. I'm not going to use it at all anymore. I think part of me is tempted to continue working on this palette, but I have already dedicated a year of my life to it, and I really want to move on and start using other shadows in my collection. So on to the things that I've learned or things that I've noticed during this year while using this palette. The first thing is that it takes way longer than anticipated to use eyeshadows. This is actually a lesson that I learned last year when I was panning on my own before I started my YouTube channel. I think at the beginning of the year I was talking about a matte eyeshadow that I was using called Hazelnut. It was a Mary Kay shade, and my goal last year, 2016, was to finish up that eyeshadow completely, and it was the exact same shot. It was the exact same size as the eyeshadows in this palette, and it took me a little bit less than a year to finish it up. And so therefore I didn't even start using Buck in this palette until April. So if I had been using Buck for 4 months, for an extra 4 months, I probably would have a bigger dip on it. Then the other thing is I don't really multitask my eyeshadows. I know that that is a tip and a trick that panners use to get through their eyeshadows, but the problem with that for me is that I have so much makeup that I wanted to use a bronzer as a bronzer. I wanted to use a highlighting powder as a highlighter. I didn't necessarily want to use my eyeshadows in my Naked palette just to go through them and neglect these other products that I have in my collection. I did start multitasking Buck and Virgin as a contour and bronzer and a highlight respectively, probably around October of this year, just because I was realizing that the year was winding down, or I didn't have as much use in those shadows as I wanted to. So for every day for 2 months, or 2.5 months, I've been using those shades as such. And even so, there's a lot more progress in Virgin than there is in Buck, as you can see. Buck is just so tightly packed. Actually, it's funny because when I'm dipping my brush into Buck, I'm noticing that the shadows that border Buck, Sidecar and Half Baked, they actually have dips going in them on the edges where my brush is being dipped into Buck. So I'm actually picking up those other eyeshadows along with Buck, and there's more progress in those shades, and I wasn't even focusing my brush in those areas. So that is just a testament to how tightly packed Buck is. So if any of you are finishing up Buck or have finished up Buck, I commend you, because that is one tough shade to go through. The second thing related to this is that I will never go through all the eyeshadow that I own in my lifetime. I think it will actually take several lifetimes in order for me to finish up all the makeup that I have. And so along with that, I don't think that Pan That Palette is a challenge that I will be pursuing in the next few years. It's just not realistic for me to focus on one palette and ignore everything else in my collection for the sake of finishing up one palette. And Pan That Palette, I think, is a wonderful challenge. It has taught me so much about my preferences, and it has taught me about my makeup using habits. So hopefully I can make smarter purchases or fewer purchases in the future. And it's probably a project that I will pick up again way in the future. You know, when my makeup collection is not as large, when I've decluttered more, when I have learned more about what I like and what I don't like. And Pan That Palette, again, is definitely something that I want to try again in the future, just not at this time. The third thing is that this project forced me to be creative, and lots of times I found myself just going for the same looks. Let me just say that I always use Naked and Buck in my crease as transition shades and as matte shades, and that is the only way that I use those shades. And I often would use Sin all over the lid. And if I wanted to darken it up with anything, I would use Smog or Dark Horse typically. Toward the end of the year, when I wanted to work on Gunmetal, I started mixing Sin with Gunmetal, which is actually a very, very pretty combination, and I enjoyed that. Sidecar, I mostly paired with Gunmetal. One of my absolute favorite looks that I had created this year was Half Baked all over the lid, Smog on the outer half, and then to use Dark Horse, I would use Dark Horse to deepen up the outer V. I also really enjoyed Toasted all over the lid, and I commonly paired that with Hustle. One glaring thing is that I did not hit pan on Creep. So that is, you know, I hit my goals on everything else except for Creep, and I am wondering if I had used Creep for the last week of the year, if I would have hit pan on it. I might have, I might not have. It will now be a mystery. But since I didn't often reach outside of my Naked palette, it forced me to try to come up with ways to use those shades in different looks, layering shades and mixing shades. I really did enjoy mixing Smog and Sin. That was actually one of my favorite ways to mix those shades, and also Sidecar and Sin. If you wanted to lighten up any of these colors, you can just mix it with either Virgin or Sin just to make it a little bit lighter and more wearable if you're kind of scared of those darker colors. This project also forced me to dabble in shades that I wasn't comfortable with. Before I started the Pan That Palette Challenge, whenever I reached for my Naked palette, I would always stay in the lighter side of the spectrum. I mean, I would use Dark Horse sometimes and Gunmetal sometimes, but I wouldn't use these darker shades, and I would just stay, you know, basically here, and I would use Toasted as well. And I think that's how people commonly use this palette because it is a naked palette, and people, I think in general, are more comfortable with more neutral looks. They're a little bit scared to go dramatic. They're a little bit scared to go out of their comfort zone. But with this challenge, I actually appreciate black eyeshadow so much more than I did before. Before I didn't even touch, I mean, before this project, I don't think I even used that black eyeshadow once. But I really learned that it contours my eyes in a beautiful way, and I think black eyeshadow is something that I will continue to use moving forward. It is never a shade that I'm going to pan completely. It just isn't. And along those same lines, I should say that Gunmetal is actually my favorite dark shade in this palette. I didn't think it would be. I thought it would be the brown, the Dark Horse, but it is actually Gunmetal. I was able to use it in ways that just made my eyes look a little bit more defined without going as dark as Creep. So that was a pleasant surprise, and I think I will always want to have a dark gray eyeshadow in my collection now. However, while using this palette during the year, I have decided that I really do prefer matte dark shades versus shimmery dark shades, and I think that's kind of what makes this palette a little bit unusable, or people don't think it's as wearable because those dark shades are shimmery, and when you're wanting to define your eyes, you really want the contrast between the shimmer and the matte. And so if one of these shades, probably not the black, and I think I said this in my introductory video that I posted in February of 2017, if Dark Horse or Hustle, and even Gunmetal, if one of those shades were matte, I would have really, really appreciated this palette a lot more. And one thing that I also found missing in this palette was a matte highlight shade. I found that I don't really care for shimmery brow bone, or at least an entire brow bone. What I like to do is take a narrow brush and just take Virgin to highlight just underneath the brow bone, but when I place my eyeshadow, I prefer to have matte down first before placing that highlight. The shimmer just all over the lid isn't a look that I prefer or gravitate towards, so that's probably not something that I am going to do moving forward, and the reason why I was forced to do it was because of this Naked palette. Using the Naked palette every day actually made life a lot easier in the mornings when I'm trying to get ready to go to work or run errands. I knew exactly what I was going to reach for, and it just, I mean, instead of standing in front of my mountain of eyeshadows trying to decide, what do I want to wear today, or how do I want to mix shades today, or how do I want to wear my eyeshadow, it was just really easy to grab the Naked palette, throw on a look, and get out the door. However, this year, with almost exclusively using the Naked palette, I discovered that I really, really missed using color on my eyes. And it actually, I think, kind of made me a little bit scared to use color now, because now I'm so used to seeing myself with neutral looks on my eyes, and I'm not really used to seeing myself with blue eyeshadow or green or purple or pink or whatever else, you know, there is to put on your eyes. I think I'm actually a little scared of it now. So coming in 2018, stay tuned for my introductory video of my Pan That Palette Challenge. I want to incorporate a lot more color. Ultimately, I really, really enjoyed using the Naked palette, and I would definitely repurchase it again. Not anytime soon, because I want to give my other eyeshadows some love, but I never really got that bored with this palette, which surprised me, because lots of the other girls that I watch on YouTube, they say they hit walls, they say they're bored, and I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is different about my experience that I didn't really get bored with this palette. I think it's just because I really enjoyed these shades that much. I really enjoyed the colors that much. And if I want to in the future, you know, repurchase this Naked palette, I'll just have a matte palette to use in conjunction with it so I can make it what I want it to be. You know, this palette, in my opinion, is not a one and done palette. It is missing some things that I think really make a complete palette what it is. But I mean, really, truly, I love this palette, and it is considered Holy Grail for me. I've never had a Holy Grail product in my life, but this really, truly is my Holy Grail product. Now, I do also have a lot of other neutral palettes that I really haven't had the chance to play with, and in the future, I want to play with those to see if I will find one that I like better than the Naked palette, but this truly is my first love. All right, everyone, I think that is all I have to say for this Pan That Palette finale. I will include my slideshow of photo progress at the end of the video, as always. Thanks again so much for following me on this journey. It has been a lot of fun, a good learning experience, and I'm really glad that I have decided to upload my progress onto YouTube. You guys have been really encouraging. I've had so much fun interacting with you guys, and I'm really excited for 2018 and what it holds. Have a wonderful new year, and I will talk to you later. Bye, everyone.